Um, Good afternoon. Can you introduce yourself to...
I'm Robert Scheer. I was a columnist and reporter for the Los Angeles Times for 29 years. I write books. I teach a professor at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and happy to be here.
Thank you.
Speaking at the ACLU convention on their 75th anniversary.
Yes, here in Iowa. Thank you very much. I'm going to be using this mostly on my medical related shows, so I'm more interested in some of the recent news of what's happening with the what's called Obamacare. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on whether it was good legislation, what were some of the powers behind the scenes that occurred with that, and what do you think is going to happen in the near future with that?
I think the biggest problem with Obamacare is there's no real mechanism for keeping down costs. And one way to keep down, or attempt to keep down costs, would have been some variant of single payer or some sort of more stringent control of costs. And it's difficult to do that and still want to have the support of the whole industry. And so Obama basically came in, as Hillary Clinton had done earlier, trying to appeal to all sides. And she ended up basically, I think, as she did, ended up basically trying to accommodate the medical industry. And at the end of the day, doesn't really get much credit for that. It's called socialized medicine when it has nothing to do with socialized medicine. It's simply a more rational way of delivering health care. And basically the medical industry should embrace it. I don't know why they've abandoned him. They pretty much got what they wanted from it, a guaranteed market, guaranteed payment. And so I think he's gotten a raw deal on this.
Do you see that the main obstruction to moving forward healthcare is coming from what segment of the medical industry?
Well, it's difficult to tell. The real problem here is that people can demagogue this issue the same way they do Social Security reform or anything else. You scare people with this, which we've all been scared for the last 50 or more years of this socialized medicine thing. So any rational thing you do to guarantee what really as a society we need to guarantee, which is that everyone get health care. We're not going to let people die in the streets, and if you don't treat them on the streets, you're going to treat them in the emergency room, and you don't do the preventive care, and it's not cost efficient and so forth. But as opposed to every other modern nation, when we move in the direction of saying, okay, we're going to have a floor of some kind of guaranteed health, it's easy to demagogue the issue, death squads and people interfere and so forth. And that's when you really need leadership. And you need bipartisan leadership, and we didn't get it here. This was basically a Republican proposal that came out of Massachusetts, a Republican governor. It was a very limited proposal for reform. I personally favor it, but I would call it a B- or something. It's a move in the right direction. It could help. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it's a cautious step. So instead of the Republicans and the lobbyists of various kinds saying, okay, we'll go with this as a limited measure, and then we'll improve on it as we go along and learn more and so forth. They started to demagogue it, and so different industry sectors, no, we want this and we need this, and if you don't get that, we're going to oppose it and so forth. And you don't have adults watching the store. That's the whole problem here with a lot of our political discussion these days. It's so manipulated by the lobbyists, and the demagogues and politicians who have no courage. We don't have leadership, whether it's about war, peace, about medicine, and so the kind of rational decision you would make about whether to buy a car or even go to this movie as opposed to that movie or eat at that restaurant or this restaurant. Most of us make rational decisions. What are the pros and cons, trade-off, right? And we'll go and we'll research it. That's not done with our big social issues. They become centers of madness. The discourse is all off joint. And that's what happened with medical. I personally think he should not have brought it up at this time. He has an economy that's in deep trouble. He should have put that on a back burner, solved the economic problem. Instead, I think he did health care reform as a way of avoiding thinking about the economy, and he thought it was going to be a win-win, and he would pull off a big victory and be celebrated. and he wasn't.
What's your prediction of what will happen if the Republicans get control of both the House and the Senate in terms of health care reform?
There'll be mischief makers. They'll pretend to be changing the system, but any of the real things to change it will cost them too much support, because you'll say, no, you're not going to cover pre-existing care, or you're not going to cover it, or no, they'll be exposed as demagogues. So they'll end up, playing with it. They won't get any change. It's a done deal. Now we have to see whether it works, and we have 3-4 years before all of it's implemented, and we'll see if it works, and hopefully if the stuff that doesn't work can be fixed on the margin. And that's mostly about cost, and as a doctor you would know more. I mean, it's very strange for me. I'm not an expert on this, but I have my own Blue Shield, Blue Cross that I get from the university, and I belong to I have what I thought was the good kind of care, and I used to have Aetna. I've had 3 or 4 different policies at one time because I was retired from the LA Times. The one that my doctors seems to want is Medicare. It's the one I don't have. I pay for it. I'm afraid to drop it because in case I need it. But that's the one, at least they say they're clear they're going to get paid. My other stuff, they keep fighting. I go into one guy, I'm at a operation about 15 years ago. I went to see the guy, and he brings me out my file. He shows me, well, see, they challenged this, they challenged that, he still hasn't been paid fully. So to my mind, if Medicare does work, and we know it can be made solid by just upping the cost for people who can afford it and so forth, why not make that the national model? I don't understand why Obama didn't start with an extension of Medicare to say people 55 or older.
Yeah, basically Medicare for all, and that's actually was my personal.
Okay, but why not? If you don't want to do it for all this week, start
55,
with 55, and let's see how that works, and they don't make the right arguments. I mean, the fact is, made it in my talk. If you don't take care of, say, older people, okay, or people ill, other people are going to have to take care of them, their relatives, their children, or what? They're going to have the burden, okay? It's not as if we're just going to, or if they don't have family, we're not going to just let them die in the street. We don't do that, So they end up in the hospital. We're being very costly. I live in downtown Los Angeles. I see what happens on Skid Row. You neglect these people, and then, they're at death's door, and they got these horrible illnesses. Somebody's going to scoop them up, take them to a USC county hospital, and they're going to be taken care of at a point where there's very little you can do for them, and it's very costly.
Right. Well, additionally, almost 2/3 of all bankruptcies in the United States are because of the medical bills, because they go into an emergency room saying that, don't worry, just come to the emergency room, and then the hospitals still bill them.
Yeah. No, I know. And look, the medical thing is one of those issues where if you had sensible leadership, it would be solved. Okay? And it would be solved in a way in which most people would be happy. Particularly if you have some kind of hybrid system where those who want more expensive care and more, boutique and more access, they can pay extra. All right? If that's important for you. And we have enough models in the world. You can go to the British or the Canadian or the Dutch or there are a lot of models out there. And you can decide somewhere, let's try that and move it. What is depressing to me is that we don't have political leadership that can overcome lobbying. We just don't.
Well, what about the gridlock in Washington? Where do you see the reason why we have such gridlock and why we don't have leadership?
Well, here I have to give Obama credit. I mean, this guy has been able to push some things through. And that's quite impressive. They're not always the things I would want pushed through or in the form, but he actually, it's not going to be as easy for the next 2 years because he's probably going to lose control of one of the houses or lose his margin. But I think he was right to come in gangbusters and say, I want to get some stuff done, And I think the worst thing that can happen for the Republicans is if they can get control of the House or the Senate. No, really, because they'll have to put up or shut up. Yeah. And they've been able to be naysayers. And, people want these problems solved. It's not kidding around for the very reason you mentioned, bankruptcy and everything else. It's a horrible thing when you can't get medical care that you need, or you think it's going to bankrupt you, or you're afraid to go, or, it's a burden. I mean, I know I deal with this all the time. I have relatives, I have to buy their medical care and so forth. It's a real issue, So if they come in and they're only obstructionists, they're going to have a hard time with it. Let me ask you a question locally. Why do we need this big Blue Cross Blue Shield building here?
Well, the answer is that Blue Cross Blue Shield has in Iowa 31% of every dollar they collect goes towards corporate expenses. And so they have this money, they need to spend it. And they 1/3 goes to true administrative costs, 1/3 goes to denying claims, and 1/3 goes to either profits or making these big edifices to Blue Cross Blue Shield.
That's appalling.
It is.
I know.
Now,
I walked all around this construction site. I thought, my God, it's the Taj Mahal or something.
It is.
And it's all going to be paper shuffling? I mean, no one's going to be cared for in there.
Right, correct. It's all paper shuffling. And it's the interesting thing is that 1/3 of the money is being spent for denying coverage, and 1/3 of their 30% that they get. And the other interesting thing is that Blue Cross Blue Shield does it for 31%, and Medicare does it for 3%.
So how does Medicare do it?
Medicare does it by, first off, not denying any claims. They basically fund all the claims that come in. If a physician says this is appropriate for the patient, they fund it. They then, if there's something comes up, it turns out that there's probably about 3 to 5% fraud in that. So when you look at it, they're paying out 3 to 5% fraud. Blue Cross Blue Shield is paying 10% to eliminate fraud. So I'd rather let 3 to 5% fraud slip through.
So that's why the doctors like Medicare, because they get paid.
We get paid. We submit a claim and we get paid. The only time the claim is denied is if we put the wrong number in. Like what we typed as the name of the procedure is different than the number of the procedure.
So then why don't the doctors get behind Medicare for all?
Because of the knee-jerk, 85 to 90% of the doctors in Iowa are Republicans, and I think that's true nationwide. And the knee-jerk following the party mantra and not really looking at the issues. Doctors are no different than the average person in terms of really not understanding the issues and listening to the fear-mongers. And this is really problematic. I sit in the doctor's lounge and I'm not quiet. Almost every time I'm talking a political discussion, and it's amazing the poor knowledge of what people are arguing. I had doctors who were arguing death panels with me, that they believed that there was going to be death panels.
Yeah.
And that's... that is scary that the doctors don't even understand their own system.
Yeah, their education is not very complete when it comes to, social issues and history and everything. I mean, they're working so hard to get through medical school, right?
Right, but while you're a physician, I have a full-time vascular surgery practice. I have 2 radio shows. I'm writing 2 books.
Yeah.
You can keep yourself informed if you want. It's not hard.
I should turn this around and interview you. Any other?
No, actually, that's very good. I want to keep it under 15 minutes, and we're right at 14 and a half minutes.
Oh, okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.